Hi, this is Doug Campbell-John, and you are on Revenue Renegades. This week, I am incredibly excited to welcome to the show Sam from Sam Sales. How do you say the name of it?
Hashtag Sam Sales. You got it. People usually leave out the hashtag, so you already nailed it.
The hashtag is great. I mean, it's a brilliant move because it's at the top of my CRM now. When I sort by companies, you're always number one. So I love that.
Was that or double A before the Sam Sales, one or the other, just to get us to the top?
Sam is somebody who I worked with back at LinkedIn, has developed, an incredibly successful consultancy, has had stints in senior leadership roles at places like On24 and other places. So welcome to the show. Happy to have you here.
So nice to be here, Doug. I have to tell you, like back in my early AE days, like you were an icon to me. I loved what you built. I remember seeing you present at LinkedIn. You did such an amazing job, also giving credit to your team. Like you really taught me some great leadership lessons that I've never told you about, but I figured I would say for our podcast to just thoroughly embarrass you. So there you have it.
I appreciate it. Yeah, we had the what I called the band of misfit toys was the Sales Navigator team, and we had a lot of fun and built some really fun stuff. So thank you very much.
Love it.
Yeah. So I love founding stories as a founder, and you've been doing this now for a few years. So tell me kind of like what made you decide to go make the leap into starting your own company, and what's the founding story of Sam Sales?
I feel like founding stories have one of two visions. People really saw a gap in the marketplace. They wanted to build something different, and other people just got a little burned out from corporate America. And I think I got the dream job of working for LinkedIn. I even remember before going there that I did a video testimonial for the brand, and they mailed me socks afterwards. And I thought that I could die happy. I was like, look at these socks with LinkedIn's logo. So getting there and getting to be part of their journey for a short period of time was amazing. But I think for me, it was a time where I was on a plane every single week. I was packing and unpacking, before the last suitcase was unpacked. And I was ready to take a break and see if I could do something on my own. So work half the time, make half the money I made in SaaS, and, what could go wrong? I should have known myself better, though, being very competitive, type A, driven, disciplined, all of that great stuff, that half-time work was going to go out the window really quickly. So August of 2019, I stepped away. And then right after Labor Day, so just before the pandemic, I started Sam Sales. And I was all by myself until February of the next year when we made our first hire. But I think the most interesting thing to me about the career I've had in sales is that I was really successful without doing any of the stuff that is traditionally taught. So thinking about, cold calls and spray and pray and, hustling and being aggressive and all of that stuff, I hustled for sure. And I was sort of aggressive, but I never did any of the things that my peers did. And then broke a lot of records, always hit quota, went to President's Club all the time, all that jazz, and then scaled teams to do the same. So I thought, I wonder what I could do if I went on my own. I wonder if I could teach one or two companies to do what I did, who, I've always wanted to do sales in a little bit more of a buyer-centric, manners-driven way. Started then, and then we're now all-women team of almost 250 clients and plus, and 5.5 years under our belt. So. And we're not even SaaS, which is the cool part. So I feel like that might be impressive if we were SaaS. So we're doing all right.
You're doing great. It's very impressive. You're definitely, you're a LinkedIn top voice and sales navigator and LinkedIn expert. What do you think are I guess start off, like, what are some of the biggest misconceptions you see sales professionals having about LinkedIn as a selling tool?
I think that they just don't understand how it works. So I think we use those terms, right? We know Jill Rowley, who I feel like kind of invented social selling. She was the social selling queen back in the day. And I think when we think about that, those words are both dated, but they're also misunderstood, right? So it kind of seems like a modern thing that nobody really knows how to do yet. And I think when we think of social selling, we think I get on social and I sell, right? That's how I do it. When I think what we should really be doing is using social as a way to spark conversation, as to build a way to build a brand, as a way to connect with executives, right, on the content they post, to use it to show our buyers we know them, true to the Sam Sales fashion of show me you know me. And I think it's just a really amazing place to, again, spark conversations. For me, LinkedIn, I started posting in about 2011, and then I got really serious about it. I think kind of an influencer, if you will, though I hate that word, in about 16 before LinkedIn influencers were even a thing. And what was amazing to me is that you could, one, reach all these audiences out there by posting content, but what it could actually do to drive leads for your business, right? And whether it's to our team or not. And by the way, none of the leads I ever drove were to my team, but I did track them because I wanted to show the revenue I influenced, like the random marketer I am there on that side. But you really can spark some conversations. You can change people's perspective. You can introduce new concepts like "Show me you know me" to the world, right? And build a global presence for yourself with a lot of effort. But it's amazing for branding. I think on top of that, it's still something. Social selling is still something that people are unwilling to do. I think very regularly, and I think that a lot of what we teach at Sam Sales is really that. It's do the stuff that no one else is willing to do. So you think about social selling, right? Doug, if I wanted to get your attention now, if I didn't know you, right, how would I do that? I'd send you a few emails. I would try my best to personalize, show I've done my research. But then I would go to LinkedIn because you, like many others, get a lot of likes on your posts, but you get very few comments because you are a giant, scary Doug Campbell-John. And what is somebody going to have to say to you? So instead, saddle up to the comments, go join the conversation, say something smart, connect with them on LinkedIn, go in for the kill after you've worked a little bit to earn the meeting. It's not hard. Nobody else is really doing that.
So is it when you talk about, you're famous for your "show me, you know me" kind of technique. Is that what you mean when you're talking about that kind of methodology? And can you give me an example of like how that transformed a kind of deal or relationship for you or one of your clients?
Yeah. So the idea of "Show me you know me" is really from using research on what you know about the person, the company, their space, them as a buyer. And it starts from the very first touch, the very first email you ever send them, right? The subject line in the email, all the way to when you've had a client for 10, 15, 20 years. What do you know about them? And this isn't just what we know about them as humans or as buyers. This is also what we know about them, of what they're concerned about, what they're staying on top of, what the trends are, what they need to support them. We just talked about this on a podcast today. "Show me you know me" is really the concept of, if you're doing a deal with a buyer and you know they're going to present to a board or they're part of a buying committee, showing them that you understand what content they need, what pitfalls they're going to have, what objections they're going to get from their buying committee. That's "Show me you know me." Or how do we nurture a buyer? How do we keep giving them content that educates them? We'll show them what's top of mind for them. So to me, it's a great prospecting tool to begin with because, Doug, I'm sure your inbox looks like mine, which probably doesn't look like nearly half as bad as most executives do. But the sales emails that we get are filled with subject lines that are really salesy, really generic, or they fake personalization, right? They say, "I see you're based in the Bay Area," or, "You went to FSU, go Knowles." And I'm like, yes, what about it? So instead, how do you do some research on someone, and how do you create a subject line in that email that makes no sense except to the person reading it? How do you listen to their podcasts, read their content, see who they're connected to? How do you use that information to say, like, I made an effort? And even if you don't need something from me or need what I'm selling, hopefully you'll at least open up the email and respond to me. But it goes beyond that, right? So who are they as human beings? What do we find out about them? Do they have pets? Are they married? Do they have goals? Do they have a second home, or do they love to travel? What do we know about them that we can use to continue to build our relationship, invest in them, show them that we care about them, and frankly, help them be better at their jobs because we understand things surrounding their entire worlds.
What are you using besides LinkedIn, obviously? What are you using then to find that information and gather that information?
Yeah, I think there's like a very generic response here where people are like, go to their website and read their 10Ks and check out their stock performance, right? And those are all really important things. Like, I don't want to call somebody a Tesla right now and be like, your stock's doing great. Not so much. Too soon? Too sensitive for you guys? No, just me as a shareholder. Desperately trying not to be. Anyhow, I think what you want to look at is what are the other pieces of content that we can find. So use ChatGPT and do a quick search. Literally tell me any podcast that Doug Campbell-John has been on in the last 90 days. Okay, let me find one where the title might make sense to what I'm doing. Okay, dissect this podcast for me. Give me 3 bullet points that are really important and tell me what time stamps they're at. Tell me something related to what Doug said that would be interesting related to my product, etc. You can find this information out really quickly using AI. I'll find this information, then I'll stick it in an email. And then if you respond, I'm like, okay, well, now I better go listen to your podcast so I can actually be educated. So you've got to do the work later. But I think there are amazing ways for you to be efficient with the information you find. There's also ways to be super, super creepy in this information. So be mindful of that, right? I think anything that can be found in a professional setting on your LinkedIn profile within the last 6 months or so of business content is fair game. Just don't, unless they're a TikTok star, maybe don't go and look for their TikTok stuff or stalk their family on Instagram. Be mindful of the way that we say things too, and that show me you know me. If you say, here are the 17 things I know about you, mostly because I'm in the bushes outside your house, Doug, that might not go over very well. But I think a little effort goes a long way. And people, again, are unwilling to do that because they still think scale, volume sales is a volume game. And I think the ones that are winning are taking the more personal route and making the effort.
Yeah, I just actually, she's a close friend, Shannon from the former CMO at LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And I recently freaked her out because we use our B2B on our website. I just took a screenshot from Slack and I said, hey, great to
What's
see you
up?
here, right? And she was like, what the hell? Like, and she knows marketing tech, but it was kind of like, oh my God. It was
Yeah.
a little too stalker behavior. Yeah.
We do that too. And I was on Adam's podcast a few weeks ago, like how do we use this? And I think positioning and semantics are really important there. So if you're like, I saw you on our website, what can we do to help you? You can also say, like, as you can imagine, we have a modern marketing tech stack. We got a note that you were on our site. I saw you were looking at these materials. Here's some supplemental things to help you. If there's anything else we can do to help you learn, let us know. I think that that's also where we get a lot of this wrong in sales is we take a lot of these cues, right? These marketing or intent signals, and we're like, they're ready to buy. And the majority of them are ready to learn, right? They want to understand things. They want to digest the information you have. So don't hustle them for a meeting. Offer to help them learn. What else can I provide for you? What are you trying to, achieve? Can I help you do something? That's great that Shannon was on your website. Can she come to ours? That'd be great.
Just don't take a screenshot from our B2B Slack.
No better.
So LinkedIn, obviously, as we both know, changes their algorithms and, all the time.
So fun.
How much does that, how do you stay ahead of those changes, and how much does that, I guess, affect your approaches?
Yeah. So one of the lines of business that we run at Sam Sales is creating executive brands on LinkedIn. So we take people just like you, Doug, and we build your whole content strategy, your backend strategy, all of that, which makes the algorithm changes super fun for us to stay on top of all the time. I will say that we look at some trends, right, to see what is changing in terms of, is video really important? Does that pay off if we get, viral exposure? Does it actually matter that we get 1 million impressions or 10,000 impressions just as valuable in another way? So we do stay on top of that. We research, we study, we look at articles that are published, obviously really close still to the LinkedIn team. They've been our client for 4 years. So get to stay on top of all those trends. But I think that there's also ones where you think about changing your approach of like, is it something that's just happening in the moment? Am I going to look like I'm caving to the latest trend? Or is it something we really need to think about that's going to benefit us for the long term? So I'll give you 2 examples here. The video trend is huge, right? LinkedIn's really pushing it. We've got a tab on it. I know they're doing all sorts of campaigns to make video a thing. I feel like it's Mean Girls, stop trying to make fetch happen, but they're really trying to make fetch happen here. I think video is actually great, and it's not just for the impressions, it's for the people in your network that are going to see you. It humanizes you. They know what your rate of speech is like, for better or worse, your hand actions and everything that you've got on your side. But it can be such a phenomenal way to connect with your audience. I think that can also be a pitfall because then, especially for me, people get on Zoom and they're like, I feel like I know you. And I'm like, okay, but I don't know you. So what can we help you with? So I think that that's one trend to think about, like, what's the actual benefit, right, of us connecting with our audience in a different way. I think there's a different trend. And in fact, I made fun of it yesterday, kind of releasing some of our prospecting playbook, which is a LinkedIn Sales Navigator masterclass. But I said, I've decided to pull some pages out of our prospecting playbook for free. Just comment, show me you know me below, and I'll send it to you. So this has been a trend, right? You have to comment with the word. Everybody comments, your post goes viral. But then you have 500 people that have commented and you need to get back to them with whatever material you promised them. So To me, I think those are one of those things, like, this is a trend. LinkedIn's going to catch on to the fact that this is happening. And when they pick up this with AI, comment with the word XYZ, they're going to kill your post. Kind of like polls were a really big thing for a while. And that was fine, to use them. Your post went viral and that was great. But then LinkedIn, as usual, catches on. So we want to stay on top of that. And there are things, the basic algorithm plays that we want to always be mindful of, links, the way we repost the things, et cetera. But otherwise, we're being a little bit judicious with how we bend on certain algorithm changes.
And when you say links, are you referring to not putting links in the main post and putting them down on the comment thread then?
Yeah, so for some reason, this is still a hotly debated thing. Some people seem to think that links make no impact to your post if you include them in the post, and other people seem to think that it does make impact. So I'm team latter, it does make impact. We've tested this so widely, abound. And one of the things to note, right, whenever you think about how you're engaging with the platform, you have to think about what's important to LinkedIn. At the end of the day, they're a business and they're here to make money and, build impressions. So when we post a link in our post, right, and if I say, like, come subscribe to our newsletter, even just the word subscribe, newsletter, podcast, sends out little red alerts. But when I put a link in there, I'm saying, hey, LinkedIn, all those people that you brought to your platform now, that one, you're desperate to get on your platform, and two, that you want to make sure have like the longest dwell time they possibly can, I'm going to take them away from your app and over to my website. And LinkedIn's going to say, that's really cute. We're going to make sure nobody sees your post. And I'm going to say, okay.
Yeah.
But I think the concept with that, right, is that, and I will note, by the way, if you use links also that have UTM codes, so like you are really showing that you are purposely trying to take people away from the platform, like that's going to get your post killed even further. So we have people in the camp that are like, well, it doesn't hurt your post, but usually those people are in pods. So they'll post their post, they've got the link in there, 78 people in their Slack community comes and, likes the post in 13 minutes. And they're like, look, somebody likes 13 minutes. It's great if you're in a pod. Yeah, it does. It makes no harm because you're just getting people to engage with your post.
Yep.
I will say one other one that seems to catch people off guard is the repost with your thoughts versus just repost. So when you repost with your thoughts, it seems like such an honor, right? Because you're reposting the author's content, you're putting your, 2 cents on it. Like, I'm doubling down on Sam's post. Here's what I think about it. But the repost with your thought actually kills the post. So it kills the reshare. The reason for that is, and this is just my own assessment, is if we all reposted your post, Doug, and added our comments, it'd be a million posts of just Doug with our thoughts on it, like riding your coattails, which sounds great to you, but maybe not so great to the LinkedIn community because that's all we see. When LinkedIn says just comment on this post, we want you to add to the thread. We don't want you to just repost with your own thoughts. So reposting by itself is great, and that really impacts the author. So if you want to do the author a favor, just hit that repost and add your thoughts in the comments below.
All great suggestions. What about connection requests? I remember some interesting research when I was there, and I don't know if it's still relevant in terms of sending a connection request with a note and without a note.
What's your preference? Let me, because I'm team with a note, and I've got my thoughts on there. But what's your preference? What do you like to see?
I think it's if you have something to give it context, like if I just met you at an event and I was like, great to see you at the GTM Fun dinner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then I'll add a note. And if not, I'll leave it off. But I was really surprised, what we had heard when we were at LinkedIn was it was actually a lower response rate when you sent a note. I think the one piece I always wondered for context for that was that if you could separate out something that was a note that had, relevant, connection like what I just described versus let me put my sales pitch in the note, then I think you're filtering out a lot of those.
Yeah, and I think you have to think about how the data is collected and across how many people and what titles and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps I suspect that that's correct, right? And that's what everybody says is when I send empty connection requests, I get a higher rate of response than when I add a note. And so my thought is, though, right, if we're reaching out to executives who, when we take a client on, the president of a business unit or division or whatever, we look at their connection requests and there's like 4,000 in there. They haven't paid attention to it in, the last 2-3 years. So if that person does take a second to look at their connection requests, even if they have 40, right, it's going to be generic, same thing. And then there's going to be the note that sticks out. So to me, it's going to catch the eye, kind of like our show me, you know me subject line does. I think when we think about how to engage executives, how to stand out, how to make an effort, particularly if we're salespeople who, as they can probably assume, want to sell them something, I think that custom note makes a difference. But the other thing that I always say is, let's say you just don't buy into that and you send the connection request, you get it accepted. Then what? What's your next play? What do you do then, right? Do you pitch slap them? Do you offer to subscribe in their newsletter? Do you ask a terrible question like, hey, Doug, we're complete strangers to each other, but what's your top priority this year?
Right.
Which you would never answer for the love of God. What do you do then? So to me, my advice isn't really just thinking about what's the highest likelihood of response. To me, it's trying to stick out in a different way, but also just trying to keep our brand a cut above versus being just like everybody else out there.
Yeah, the old 1-2 punch of I did a connection request and I was like, this person might have some value to me or vice versa, and then suddenly you're the full blown sales pitch.
Oh my
Um,
God.
like there should be the thumbs down loop, right? There should be the 5-star rating loop inside of LinkedIn, so I can basically relegate them to the bad SDR pile. And I have great empathy for what they do, right? But
Yeah.
it's just bad behavior.
Well, and I will say there, on our end, I'm on the receiving end of tons of connection requests. In fact, the admin on my team just cleaned up, I think, like 1,400 of them that had collected in like the last month. And so one thing that we will do is we now unfortunately have to be judicious with who we accept because LinkedIn will not update their connection request limit to the modern age and give us more than 30,000 to be first degree connected. But I think the other thing is if we connect with somebody that is an interesting title to us, so a CRO, head of enablement, SVP of sales, whatever it is, if they don't send a note, we want to keep track of who connects with us and that we basically don't know them. So every time we get a blank connection request, if it's worthy of us being first degree connected to, we'll respond and we'll just say, thanks so much for saying hello. Lovely to be connected. It's so helpful because one, we can keep track of who these people are, but two, if we go back in 6 months and I'm like, how the hell do I know this person? Just seeing that tagline, one, gives me a timestamp of when we connected, which I otherwise wouldn't have because that feature disappeared from LinkedIn. And two, it reminds me that they connected with me. So like they made the first move, so to speak. And now I can go back and ask for them for things in a different way than if I had connected with them first.
Really smart. Do you use any kind of automation tools for your LinkedIn work?
No, I think the automation tool one, I got to be honest, I'm terrified of getting in LinkedIn jail.
Yeah.
That's what the automation tools are like. They're a short circuit for that. I've been in LinkedIn jail twice. I think there was even a hashtag free Sam McKenna, like let Donna Martin graduate. Do you remember that from 90210? I'm really dating myself here. But there was a free Sam McKenna hashtag. And the beauty is, too, that I have no idea why I got in LinkedIn jail. You get this note back that says, here are the 17 crimes you may have committed. And I'm like, well, I didn't commit any of those crimes. But so we do everything the good old-fashioned way of using a human. And it's expensive. We pay somebody full-time to manage my profile. That's a ton of administration. I think I get 100 DMs every single day, like within 10% of that. It's a lot. And then people get really angry. They're like, I messaged you 2 days ago. Where's my response? I'm like, get out of here. So no automation on our side. I know there's some people who use great stuff for managing their inbox. I think Condo is one of them that everybody talks about. And there's some tools out there for analytics, but I can't remember the name of one. Something Dragon. Do you know what I'm talking about? Dragon.
I recall hearing about it, but I don't remember the name of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember it either. But I think when I look at that, I look at the data, the analytics you get back, and I'm like, what do you do with this? Like, how is it valuable to you? And they're like, well, I saw on Tuesday, at 9:34 a.m. that my post did really well, so I'm going to post every Tuesday at 9:34. And I'm like, I mean, stick your finger in the wind and decide like when it's going to perform well. You have no idea. Just because it did one day doesn't mean it's going to another day. So to me, most of the automation isn't helpful. And like I said, I'm afraid next time they're going to say, this is the final straw, and I'm never going to be allowed on LinkedIn again.
Third strike.
Third strike, yeah. And then we're going to close up Sam Sales. That's how LinkedIn's that valuable to us in terms of inbound lead, brand exposure. Like, it's huge.
So what are, there's a lot of executives, myself included, ironically, like until the last few months, who are kind of hesitant to build their personal brand on LinkedIn. What would you say to them in today's market?
What was your objection for that? What made you uncomfortable about it? And I know what you're already going to say, and I have a great rebuttal.
I think it was two things. One of I hate writing,
Mhm.
And
Oh,
the second was, I felt like, I don't know, this feels salesy, and I don't know if I have much value to add, right? And when I kinda got into the groove of doing it, it was suddenly and I did the what I did for coffee was a mix of, "Hey, here's some things that I know about, like, here's the history of CRM, or here's the problems with CRM that were relevant to my business, but still informational," and just purely, vulnerable stuff, like, I felt, insufficient, or here's how I feel about DEI, and I've done a number of those, and
yeah.
combination for me just felt like a really interesting way to be genuine.
I think did you have, was it one objection that came up, "Who cares what I'm gonna have to say?" Did you ever think about that?
Yep,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's interesting. I think the more accomplished the executive is, the more hesitant they are to build a brand on LinkedIn. And so I think like you look back at your career and the incredible things that you've done from selling a business to LinkedIn to being at Salesforce and now doing this, like you've had such an incredible career with really amazing positions and accomplishments. Would be so lucky to learn from you and to hear the accomplishments that you have. So I think one of the things that we find is the more value the exec has, the more hesitant they are to build a brand, which kills us because we're like, oh my God, like get your voice out there. I would say, I think you think about this in two ways. So if you think about this purely selfishly, this is a move that's going to help you no matter what the next step is in your career. And if you even think about, you know what, I'm at AT&T and T and I'm going to be here until I'm 67 and then I'm going to call it a day. Well, maybe at 67, you want to consult and maybe you just want to work with one or two clients and no one's going to have any idea who the hell you are because you never built a brand and you worked for AT&T with like 300,000 of your closest peers. Actually, don't know how many employees AT&T has, so I'll have to fact
A
check
lot.
that one. But so think about that. Like what's the next, right? We talked about this at LinkedIn. What's the next play? What's the next play? What are you going to do at some point, right? So build a brand for the long term. I think the other thing to think about, particularly if you're an executive, founder, executive, Fortune 500, Fortune 5000 brand, you're doing an amazing service for your business by getting your voice out there. So two things that we look at here, if you're a startup, you're a founder, if you're building something like Coffee is for Closers, if you're building something like that, no one knows theoretically that you exist and that the company exists. LinkedIn is the cheapest cost per impression way to build a brand and get that stuff out there. And then for us, we have celebrity clients, we have Fortune 500 clients, we have really big wig clients. And what's interesting about their brands is that they're faceless brands. You know the logo, you know the company, but you don't know who works there. You don't know what they stand for. There's very little transparency, especially on LinkedIn. The only thing we see is their corporate LinkedIn page, which, makes you feel really good. So when an executive gets out there, and it's not just sales, stuff then or webinars or whatever that they're promoting, but they start to talk about everything you talked about, right? Like Doug, with your stories out there, the DEI piece you talked about, the insecurity, that piece that you talked about that I was like, oh my gosh, it was just so good. When we start to tell stories like that, not only does it get far reach just because of the executive title that we have, but on top of that, right, it creates transparency, it creates all this activism for what you're talking about, relatable stories. And the cross-functional impact that can have is tremendous. Like we're working on our corporate deck about this, but it's like recruitment ROI, earned media, invitation for board seats, transparency internally, the lack of attrition because your employees actually know what you think about now, on and on. And at some point, somewhere in there, revenue comes in, which I guess is the goal, I'm told, of a business. But, like you think about that. And I will say one other thing. For anyone considering that journey, I think there's also a lot of hesitancy, particularly from our accomplished execs, to say, this is what I did. They want to say, this is what you should do to be successful. And it's actually the opposite. Don't talk about what you should do. Talk about what you did. Because when you say, this is what you should do, it's like you're sitting in your ivory tower and be like, go get him, Tiger, and work hard. Instead, say, I busted my ass. You and I have a common former coworker, and well, she was my boss's boss, but Alyssa Merwin, and she tells a great story. She's the head of LinkedIn Sales Navigator for global sales now. She tells a story about when she was a BDR, and I think just she had been promoted to AE. Everybody would go to happy hours in the bar and all that, and she would stay and she would rehearse her speeches for her meetings the next day in the mirror. Tell that story. Show how you did it, right? Because everybody wants your job someday. So talk about what you did to really grind and kill it, and your content will kill it.
Yeah, I think that notion of just understanding that we're all insecure, awkward apes trying to figure out,
Yeah.
yeah, like trying to figure this stuff out at any level, right?
I have no idea what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah, I mean, take it to the highest levels of our government these days. Take it to
Oh
any,
God.
right?
Should we go there? That could be fun.
There,
No, no, too soon, too soon.
too soon, too soon, too soon.
Oh,
As a Tesla shareholder as well.
oh
Um,
God.
yeah. All right, let's change topics. So obviously you can't, open up a post or do anything these days without the two letters AI being in there.
Mhm.
And what is your take on kind of where AI, helps today and where it's maybe overblown and where it's going?
I think AI is amazing, and I think everything that we're building with agents. Like, I mean, my makes my eyes cross. I have no idea what's happening, but I'm very excited to see other people figure it out, and then how it'll benefit us. And I think it's truly just even the small things that we can do. Like, I'm very very novice with ChatGPT, but the small things that we can do in there, like, my mind is blown. It really is, like, the information it feeds back. So I think it's incredible. I do think that there's a saturation on AI. And so you have every company, right, that now thinks that they have artificial intelligence as part of their platform. And, there's one platform in particular that I think about that is, I won't name them, but that is incredible at its core. It is an amazing, amazing platform. If you look back at what it did 10 years ago, the reason it was built, it's amazing. And now, because they feel like AI is a thing that they have to do, they're saturating themselves with all of these AI features that actually is making them look just like everybody else and doing the same things that other people do. So now you've got these sales reps, global sales reps, billion-dollar company that are going billion-dollar division, that are going after and saying AI, AI, AI. And the buyers are saying, but all of our other platforms that we already invest in our sales tech stack do exactly that. So why would we use you? And so I've talked to their executive team, and I said, the best analogy I could come up with is, you guys were this gorgeous human, and you went and got a bunch of plastic surgery, and now you look just like the Kardashians, right? You look just like everybody else. You should have just focused on what made you really beautiful to begin with. Focus on that core value proposition that nobody can compete with, because you have what everybody wants, and go from there. So I think we just need to be careful there. I think the other thing is the way that we use AI as, to me, it's our new shiny object silver bullet, right? So, like, I think about when Outreach and Sales came on the market, and everyone's like, wait a minute, like, I can put brackets in, I can push a button, it's going to automate 17 email touches, write the word Doug in the email, and Doug's going to think that I wrote the email just for him. This is magical. And so it works for like 18 months, and then everybody catches on, figures it out, and then you really have to start to pivot. I think AI is that same way, right? We think about AI SDRs that are a hot mess, in my opinion. We think about AI to scale authenticity. The fastest way to your buyer's heart is to trick them into thinking you made an effort, and then they realize when you get on the sales call that you have no idea, anything that you wrote in that email. So to me, when we think about AI and the sales landscape, I think about it of how you can use that to do what I said earlier. Scale your learning, understand that buyer's issues, figure out where they've spoken recently, learn, right? Understand what a particular industry does that you have no idea about. And then mix that with your brain, your humor, your sarcasm, your intelligence, right? And write something thoughtful, or show up with a well-prepared presentation because you've done your research in 5 minutes versus the 50 it might have taken you before. What are your thoughts?
I have never been more excited. I've got a lot of gray hair. I've never been more excited about any tech I've ever been involved with in my career than this.
Yeah.
And I think it is. I have no idea how, like, people I know who aren't in tech keep up with any of this, because I'm
Ooh,
barely, above the
barely.
surface, trying to keep in touch every day when there's like 5 new agent announcements from HubSpot, Salesforce, and Anthropic and OpenAI. It constantly astounds me.
Yeah.
I started digging into the deep research features in
Oh, yeah. Do you
complexities.
have 20 grand a month to give OpenAI? Because,
I don't have that. I'm sending him 200 a month, but I'm using, yeah, now I understand my bill's going to go up. But But Perplexity has become my search engine, right? So I never thought in my lifetime Google would be displaced, and here I
Yeah.
am
Here you
going to
are.
Perplexity every day. And I am amazed when I go into the deep research features of ChatGPT and Perplexity, and you know benchmark a lot of these things against each other because I don't think there's a one size fits all what they come up with. And
Mhm.
and there's some stuff where you're like, okay, I didn't prompt that well enough. And but what I love about the deep research path is this notion of here's what I want to do. And one of the things I've learned in prompts, I'd love to hear some of your favorite prompts, is what other information would you like from me to help you answer this question?
Yeah.
And so I was doing some go to market stuff recently, and it came back with like, here's 7 questions. And we just went back and forth for like 30 seconds. And then I said, great. And then he spent all of 7 minutes, which is an eternity in search.
Eternity.
But like, and here's a 9-page plan, right? So
Yeah.
it's cool.
I think on the sales front and all sorts of places where I give you prompts, I'll actually tell you one on the personal front. And I think this still blows my mind of how this can do this. So, about 2 years ago, I took my very first trip to Vancouver. I went to go speak at a sales kickoff there for a client, and I had a driving trip that I was going to do, and I used it to plan an agenda, and I was so specific, like, tell me the off the beaten path routes that I can take. What's a neighborhood road that I might not know that has an amazing view of the water and the mountains? I really want to try like the best cheesesteak, but I want to do it on the way to this. It wasn't cheesesteak, don't worry. It was because that's,
Yeah,
no, I was
totally.
on the other side. Yeah. But things like that. And I don't know, 16 seconds, right? It spits this stuff out, complete with links, all the things that you can go and do. Like, I think about that, or like to me, so I'm a relatively new mom. I have a little 13-month-old tiny human at home, and I don't really know shit about parenting, but I'm trying to figure it out. So instead of going to like 100 different TikTok accounts or Instagram accounts, I ask like, what's something really thoughtful that I can do for a 2-year-old's Valentine's Day next year? Things like that. Or like, what are 6 things that I should do that I'll have regretted not doing as a parent? I'm asking things like that on the personal level, and the creative ideas that are coming back. It's not just like, build a folder for his, cutouts. It's just really cool, creative things that I can do now and that I would have regretted not knowing before.
I love that. I found the word spicy is interesting when I
What's
do.
that?
So when I'm like, I'd like to have, would you give me a spicy take on this, or would you give me? I'd like to, um, uh, make
Contrarian point of
this
view.
punchy, or even just like summarize. Like I've been, what's incredible, like I've started recording these podcasts, and I will take the transcript, and I'll say, could you give me a punchy 120 word title for this? Or would you give me a spicy take on this person's, profile, right, and bio? And there's something about those kind of adjectives or kind of modifiers that seem to work in terms of what it spits back.
I have to ask our writing team for our LinkedIn clients if they're doing that. Give me a spicy take on this. There's a influencer of sorts on LinkedIn, and I took some of his posts that I find him to be just not interesting at all. And I posted his content in ChatGPT, and I said, what's the sentiment you feel? And he wrote back arrogance, and I was like, yeah, that's what I would have said too. Thanks for validating my point of view. We're friends now.
That's awesome.
ChatGPT and I. That's cool. I like the spicy take. That's a good tip.
What about prompts that you like professionally? Right.
I do a lot on the sales front. So, well, one I will tell you, like it has really sped up our graphics. The things that we do with graphics. So even I used to take these really terrible screenshots, and then I would load them on LinkedIn because I'm 400 years old and I don't know how technology works. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna ask ChatGPT about this. So I just drop in my little attachment and I'm like, make this clearer, add a circle here, do this, and then it just does my bidding for me. I'm really amazed. I'm sure whoever's listening to this is like, it's 101. I was doing that 6 years ago with ChatGPT, even though it wasn't around then. But like, I'm just learning this stuff, and then prompts on content. So tell us, like, when I'm writing a sales email, we're trying to figure out a better value proposition. Like, we pull out, like, tell us about the case study. How does this relate to this? What can you find on their website that talks about this? It's all really specific to the client, but it helps us figure out, how to communicate in a more effective way. and just to make sure that we're capitalizing on all the content that they have, like either on their site or across the board, their podcasts, et cetera, without having to do all of that reading. What about you? Anything professionally?
So I've done, a lot of summarization of stuff. I find it's really good for that. As I said, the deep research stuff has been interesting in kind of thinking about some go-to-market things. What most people don't know is, what I love design, right? So I love my favorite meeting of the day. No offense to my engineering team or the rest of my team, is what we call design jam when we're sitting
Oh,
working on the user interface stuff. But what I found is, user interface designers are not necessarily great logo designers or are not necessarily great graphic designers. There's some that can span those. So most people don't know the coffee logo was designed by ChatGPT.
that's amazing. Yeah. How'd you do it? What was the prompt?
I have to go back and look, but I think for coffee it was like I'd like something that looks like it's steam rising off of a cup of coffee that I could kind of animate, and I put and we did. And what I found in ChatGPT is that if you have something that's close and then you say modify it, it gets worse, right? It's actually terrible for that. And it's never been oh my God, I'm just taking that as is. But I had for the logo, I had sent my designer to say, come up with some logo designs, and he came up with like 5 different designs. And I love this guy. And I said, I'm sorry, ChatGPT beat you. Could you clean this one up? And it was kind of the same for Revenue Renegades. They came back with this logo that was kind of looked like a biker tattoo and a, microphone there. And I'm like, I love this. Like, clean that up. So that's been a surprising one on the visual side for me.
Yes.
Um,
See, I wouldn't even know to do that. I wouldn't even know. I design a logo for me. Here's what I want to see it do. Our logo was designed by a PwC consultant that's a bestie. And he's like, I should have charged you for this. And I'm like, yes, but thank you for not. Thanks, Greg.
yeah, many stories like that. Well, let's ask if I know we're coming up on time. One of the things I just wanted to get into that I'm really fascinated by, like, your team is famous for being all women
Yeah.
and really prioritizing philanthropy. Kind of, can you talk
Hmm.
a little bit about what inspired that structure and kind of what it meant for what it means for your culture?
Yeah, I think thanks for asking and highlighting that. I think a couple of things. So, little known fact about me is back in the day, back in the day, right after I graduated college, I got married. So my first husband, my first of many, just kidding. I'm only on my second one. Let's see how it goes. My first husband was an Army officer, and so I was stationed abroad. I had a bachelor's degree, all the guys deployed, and then I was in the middle of a small town in Germany with the former number 3 at Fannie Mae, with a Boeing executive, with a woman that had multiple master's degrees, second from Furman, really smart people. And we were all military spouses that nobody would hire because we were abroad and we needed flexibility or different working hours. So this is back in the day before, remote work was really a thing. But even now, I find that it's, military spouses and expat spouses have a hell of a time getting hired, and they're brilliant and capable. They manage global moves like every 2 years. Like, they're amazing. So one of the priorities I made was I'm going to hire military and expat spouses to give them opportunity, because I sure as hell wish I had that, and so many still do. So it just turned out that the majority of them they were women, right? So they're married, their spouses traveling all over and raising their kiddos, and they say, I'd love to use my brain and my education. Can I pick up 20 hours? So most everybody that's come on actually came on to our company as an outsourced BDR, and now have grown into our head of operations, our VP of marketing, and promoted several times, full-time roles, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's one thing. It's interesting too, I will say. There's every so often we get on a call with a gentleman who says, where are the guys? And we say, who cares? Don't worry, we don't say that. But we immediately know we probably shouldn't work together. I don't think this is going to go well. So we've got that going for us. I will say it is also interesting to see how we navigate the marketplace for sales. Some people see that as a tremendous advantage. Other people are like, you sure you know what you're talking about? And we're like, I mean, we've got half a brain at least, so give us a shot. So it's interesting. That could be a whole another podcast episode. I think philanthropy, in case you can't tell from this episode, I'm a bleeding heart liberal. And I just want to do right for our world, and I want to do right for others. And I think I've been given just a wonderful path to have a soapbox and a podium. And, some people seem to listen to me. So I want to use that for good. I feel like I have a responsibility to do that. So I can do a couple of things. I can, use the money I have and the success I've had to make a difference, which I definitely do. But I can also say, like, listen, like, you want to pick my brain, you want time with us, you want to bring us in for one thing, like, we'll cheapen, the hour for you if you give it to charity. And so we've done that. We also did a charity event twice during the pandemic where we said, like, do you want to get in front of the Doug Campbell-Johns of the world, the Alyssa Merwins of the world? Some really important titles that we brought on said, for $5,000 to charity, you can have a 5-minute spot to pitch your product, and you're going to have 20 buyer personas sitting in and listening to you. So we raised, I think we're over 125,000 collectively that we raised there. And then there's one other thing that I do that my best friend is a teacher, a phenomenal teacher in the area of DC. And so when I get pick my brains, which I get all the time, we just respond and say, we'd be happy to. I have to protect my time. If you'd like to do this, you have to spend $250 on an Amazon card, send it to our teacher, my teacher friend. And if not, if it's out of range, totally okay. But I think what a privilege to get to do this. And I think it makes me feel like we're chasing more than just revenue, but we're trying to put good back in the world wherever we can.
I love both of those stories. I didn't know about the veteran background, and I love that, or the military spouse piece. I love it.
Thanks. Yeah.
Is there a filter on LinkedIn? You just look for military spouses? I don't.
Yeah. So we've actually helped a bunch of people do this because they need to hire, they're like, we want to hire a virtual VA, a virtual VA, a virtual assistant. We can work with companies that charge us $75, and we're like, why not just hire a military spouse? Like, you can pay them $40, save a bundle, and probably get somebody even more capable. We do this through the specific channels that we're in on military spouse boards. So there's one I think called Trailing Spouses. That's for the State Department spouses that our friends help us with. And then a bunch of different Facebook groups. We're actually very actively hiring for a few part-time roles. So I'll just make that plug here whenever this goes live. Give us a shout. We'd love to have you. But that's it. I will say one other plug is if you look at the hashtag transitioning teachers, there are very unfortunately so many teachers that are leaving the profession because it's a pressure cooker and a lot of hours for not a lot of pay. But take a look at that because they're posting on LinkedIn. And they're looking for sales jobs, and they can't believe their luck that anybody would pay them $60,000 a year base salary plus $60K in comp, and that they can work from home, in their Lululemon yoga pants instead of being in front of students all day. So take a look at that. There's incredible talent to be found if we just get a little creative.
Great suggestions. Well, I know we're coming up on time here. I have a few just kind of questions for you for wrapping up. So. When you think about AI, and we've talked both in professional or personal uses here, if you could kind of wave a magic wand and automate one thing in your life with AI, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. It would be all of the follow-up that I needed to do on LinkedIn with executives for the 111,000 connections I have. Weed it all out, follow up with them, build a whole system in there, and not put me in LinkedIn jail. That's my very narrow use case for Sam over here.
I love it. What you revealed a few things that I didn't know about you in terms of things you're passionate about, but is there anything else that you're passionate about that might surprise people?
I don't talk a lot about like the I'm really into like foreign cars. So I've talked about this before in a few places, but I have an inordinate amount of speeding tickets. So I grew up with a very, very impatient mother as a driver who drove 911s her whole life. It was her jam. And then very, very impatient and not a reckless driver, just impatient. Lots of cursing in Italian or whatever language was handy at the moment. But I really am into that. I love to drive. Like, one of my happiest places to be is behind the wheel of a car in a place that I don't know and trying to navigate. So like back to the Vancouver story of give me a route with ChatGPT, like I'm so happy there. So, but yeah, I love foreign cars. I'm not like a muscle car girl. I'm not like your Corvette girl, but I'll tell you, in 2020, I took the leap to buy my own 911. So I got one brand new, and then I convinced Josh Braun to also get one, although he's probably going to kill me for revealing that. But yeah, I love it. And yeah, I have 39 speeding tickets on my record. So
outstanding. Outstanding.
Well, only 43. You do the math.
Well, you'll have to come out for the Concours d'Elegance, show.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. This is like there are so many things on my list. Like when can I retire and just do that? Races in Italy, all sorts of things that I want to do. Monaco, F1. Yeah, there's a lot on my list. What about you? What's something people don't know about you? What's one thing not on your LinkedIn profile, Doug?
I have escaped from Alcatraz 3 times, so I'm an open water swimmer, or was. I haven't done it in a couple of years, but it's like just a bunch of weirdos that like jump off a boat and jump into the water with wetsuits and flail like around like sea lions, and it is incredibly peaceful for me and fun to kind of be in the bay and swimming.
What time of year are we doing this swim?
Uh, it's the warmest time of the year, which is usually September, the fall, and they usually do it around a slack tide, which means when I say warm, it's maybe 58, 59 degrees, right? That's
Okay.
warm for the bay. And slack tide means like if you swim fast enough, you won't get swept out the Golden Gate Bridge. So
That's good.
yeah,
Are you wearing like a 3 millimeter suit at that point or?
there's special wetsuits that are like extra padding kind of on the chest and the front and like
Yeah.
thin in the shoulders, so you can still move your shoulders.
Yeah.
But yeah, my favorite swim I've ever done is under the Golden Gate Bridge from one end to the other, and then it's just you're just like sitting there in amazement at this, architecture.
Structure. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh. But there's boats watching you so that if you get pulled under, someone's coming
it's
after you.
it is
Yeah.
it is true.
That is very cool. I did not know that.
There we go. We
I
found out.
love it.
There. And then finally, just how can listeners keep in touch with you and kind of help you on your mission?
Yeah, thanks. Go to samsalesconsulting.com. That's our site. We have everything there, newsletter, really fun stuff, our YouTube, lots of playbooks and shorts and all things so you can buy or not buy and spend zero money with us and get access to our content, which is every entrepreneur's dream. So please come in and hang out there. And then we have a great podcast actually that we launched. So we are interviewing executives that have at least 250 million in P&L and had great grandson of William Howard Taft on there, CMO of Teradata on there. Has some really exceptional people with wild stories and a lot of business acumen to share. So come check us out. It's all on our website.
Well, thank you, Sam. I feel like we could have a 5-hour conversation,
Same.
and that's so sad to cut this off, but great having you on the show.
Thanks.
And we'll talk again soon.
Okay. Thanks, Todd. Bye.